Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? Here on Behind the Star, we share stories about the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Central Florida's largest law enforcement agency. From forensics to dispatch to the deputies on patrol, we'll talk to the brave men and women who protect our community. This is Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My name is Jon Busdeker, your host here on Behind the Star, and today's episode is a super special episode because we have Sheriff John Mina with us today, and he is a returning guest. He was on the first episode. He kicked it off with us, and Sheriff, you probably don't know this. Your episode actually has the most downloads of all of our episodes.
Well, of course it does. No, I didn't know that.
But yeah, well, I think people want to start from the beginning, and so they listen to that. Plus, they want to hear what you have to say. So we'll see if we can reach that goal again and get some more downloads on this episode. But for today's episode, we're doing something a little bit different. We're actually here in Sheriff's office. We're in your office, and before we started, last week, we sent out an email to all of the employees that work here at the Sheriff's Office. That's 2,500 people, asking them to submit questions for this podcast. And we asked, they can ask you anything they want. And so we received dozens and dozens and dozens of emails with really, really, really great questions from both our law enforcement officers and our civilians. And so I have these questions here in front of me. And we had to edit them a little bit only because of time, because you can't be here for hours and hours. And plus also we got so many questions that I wanted to really focus on the types of questions that kind of are interesting to both people that work here and the public who maybe don't work here. So some of the questions, we didn't really want to get super into the weeds for some of these questions. So that's why they might be a little bit more general. So anyway, Sheriff, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, here we go. So we'll just start from the beginning. This was from Nicole Bennett. She's a records tech, and she works in the records custodian unit. And her question is, were there any challenges or major differences from the switch from chief of the Orlando Police Department to sheriff? And also, how did you overcome those challenges?
A great question, Nicole. I do get asked that question a lot. What's the biggest difference between being the chief of police in Orlando and now being the sheriff in Orange County? And I could really sum that up in one word, and the one word is independence. And the independence of being an elected official. So when you're chief of police, you're appointed by the mayor and the city commissioners, and you have a boss to answer to. Here, as the elected sheriff of Orange County, my boss are the residents and voters in Orange County. So with that comes a lot of autonomy and independence to do the things I want to do. And it has really been, I will say, liberating. I really enjoy it. Things happen a lot quicker, and I'm able to put in my priorities at the pace I want them to. One of the biggest challenges I've had since I've been sheriff is, going back to when I was chief at the Orlando Police Department. I was there for almost 28 years, so I grew up there. So when I came here, the agency was new, but more importantly, I'm working with a lot of different people. So things would come up, and I'm like, well, who would be best suited to do that? Or who would be the best person for this job or this task? At Orlando, I kind of knew all that off the top of my head because I've been there for so long. So here I rely a lot more on my senior staff and even some others to kind of guide me and tell me, what are everyone's strengths and weaknesses. But now, after being here over a year now, that part has become a lot easier.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. Next question. This is from Kelly Short, aircraft mechanic in aviation. Question is, what has been your most memorable personal success since becoming sheriff?
Well, I wouldn't say that the successes are personal, because here I think we're one big team, one big family. I think one of the greatest successes that we've had since I've become sheriff is really telling the community our story. And I have received so much feedback from residents and even visitors about the things that we're putting out on social media, to include this podcast, the ability for our residents to see body cam video of our deputies saving people's lives, pulling people out of burning cars, pulling people out of cars that went into a retention pond. That, I think, has been one of our biggest successes, really telling our own story and showing people all the great things that we do in this community. Not all the great arrests we make and the investigations we do, but all the community engagement that we do here in Orange County. And
I got to say, as storyteller, part of that is my job here. And I like to tell our deputies, I do like half the job. I mean, they're the ones out there, and our civilians too. I just sort of tell the story. They're the ones doing the actual hard, dangerous work. I get to sit behind a computer and shoot video.
That's right.
All right. So next question. And also, I should have said this at the beginning. If I read a question and I mess up a name, I totally apologize. So I think I'll get this one right, though. So this is Danielle Geiger, works in cyber intelligence. She's a cyber intelligence analyst, and she works for CFAX, which is the Central Florida Intelligence Exchange, which you might have to explain a little bit before we get too far. But I'm going to ask you the question here. What do you feel sets OCSO apart from other law enforcement agencies? But why don't you start by explaining what is CFAX? Is it CFAX or CFAX?
CFAX. That's right. Central Florida Intelligence Exchange. And what that is really a regional intelligence center. So we have local, state, federal, and even private personnel assigned there, and they're gathering intelligence, analyzing that intelligence, specifically as it relates to possible domestic terrorism. And so they're getting all this information in, they're analyzing it, and then they're sending it out. So in other words, if they receive information from Seminole County that there is a sovereign citizen that may be a danger to law enforcement, then they are making sure that they're sending that information out. Or if they receive information about a certain protest, they may have some counter protesters that have in the past been violent. They're making sure that everyone in those law enforcement agencies knows what's going on.
Okay, so let me re-ask you the question that Danielle set in. What do you feel sets OCSO apart from other law enforcement agencies?
The Orange County Sheriff's Office is one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the entire state of Florida, and really is one of the top law enforcement agencies in the country as far as size and scope. We are a full-service law enforcement agency, and probably unlike 99% of the law enforcement agencies across the United States, we do a lot of additional things. We have an aviation unit, we have a marine unit, we have a canine unit, a mounted unit, we have gang units, and so just about anything you can imagine in law enforcement, the Orange County Sheriff's Office is doing it. One of the more interesting facts about the Orange County Sheriff's Office is we are only one of 4 sheriff's offices in the state of Florida who do not run the jail. So here in Orange County, the jail is really run by the county commission. They hire a corrections chief. Our corrections chief here is Chief Luis Quinones, and they have a corrections staff. So a lot of people get that confused. People think that the sheriff here in Orange County runs the jail, and that's absolutely not true. But I think one of the other thing that sets us apart, we're accredited by 2 different agencies here in Florida. We're always up on the latest technology, from body cams to drones to less lethal weapons, and we're always trying to get better, so our deputy sheriffs have the best tools available. One of the other things we have here that not many law enforcement agencies have is we have a real-time crime information center. So right now here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office, in a room filled with computer monitors and TV screens, we have access to thousands and thousands of cameras all across the county. We have access to all the cameras in all of Orange County public schools should an incident happen there. And so as the calls are coming in, we have detectives and crime analysts that are actually reading those calls and then trying to pull up video, maybe even live feed of the area the deputy sheriffs are responding to.
Excellent. All right. Next question. This is from Chip Cantley in aviation. So law enforcement and crime reduction are 2 different things. It seems the sheriff is expected to reduce crime, yet you are a law enforcement officer. Why is the sheriff expected to reduce crime when it's his job to enforce the law?
Well, they really go hand in hand. And so, it's our job to enforce the law, but also we have a responsibility to help prevent crime from even happening. And that's where I tell our residents that, we can't do it alone. There can't be a deputy sheriff on every single street corner in front of every single house, nor do we want that. So we need our residents to keep their ears and eyes open and call us if they see something that's out of place. And I always tell our residents this: if they can picture the front of their house and they look across the street and they see their neighbor's house, and I bet you they can tell me what kind of cars belong in their neighbor's driveway, when the landscaper comes, what kids are visiting their neighborhood. Well, a deputy sheriff can't possibly know all that information. So that's why it's incumbent upon our residents to pay attention in their neighborhoods, see what's going on. If they see something suspicious, call us. Lock up your doors. That's one of the big issues that we have, not only here in Orange County, but nationwide, is vehicle burglaries. Because these bad guys know that many times we leave our doors unlocked. And also, a big issue and a big problem we have, people are leaving their valuables in their cars, such as guns, computers, cell phones, wallets, watches, you name it. We have found that people have left those items in their cars. So we need people to lock their stuff up and keep their valuables inside.
All right. Next question. This is from Elisa Riviera. She's a administrative assistant, and she's in human resources. And we actually got several versions of this question. So if you sent this one in, I'm sort of lumping them all together with Lisa's question here. So law enforcement is stressful. How do you juggle your home life versus your work life? How do you reduce stress, and do you have any hobbies?
Well, I do get asked that question a lot. So probably unlike a lot of law enforcement leaders, I don't golf. I don't really have a hobby per se. I do like to work out. I like to run. I like to do some CrossFit stuff. And the biggest thing I do to reduce stress is I make sure I get enough sleep. And I find I really talk to our employees about that all the time, that when people are too tired, when they're trying to burn the candle at both ends, they get upset. They get upset easily. And it really, especially in my job and all the different things that I do and the hours that I work, I really try and get a good night's sleep each night. And I would tell you what, this is such a great agency that I actually sleep like a baby at night.
You got people that you can trust while you're
really
sleeping.
I really do. Yes.
So when do you do CrossFit and working out? Because I get here about 8:30 or so most days, and you're usually already here. And even when I leave, sometimes you're here too. So when are you doing this?
Yeah, so mostly either I wake up really early. On some days when I don't have an early meeting, I wake up early and work out, or I'll go home after a long day and work out. It's one of the hardest things to do, but I do it. And then especially on the weekends, I make sure I do not miss a workout, because most times I do have some events and some things that I have to do on the weekend, but most times I have the weekends off, so I make sure I get a good workout in.
And then when it comes to hobbies, you don't like collect anything, do you?
No,
No?
I don't. Well, I collect, as you can see in my office, I collect a bunch of challenge coins from actually all over the nation and all over the world.
Okay.
So that's my little collection of challenge coins. It's pretty extensive.
Yeah.
And then I just like anyone else. There are many shows that I watch on Netflix.
What's your favorite show on
Netflix?
What's your favorite show on Netflix?
Oh,
what are you watching right now?
I have many. Let's see, the Peaky Blinders.
Oh, that's a good show. You watch cop shows or not?
Yeah, I do watch cop shows.
Yeah? Do you point out all the wrong things they're doing?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, there is a new show on TV with a chief of police called Tommy, and I keep pointing out the inconsistencies in that show. And
maybe you need to hire you as a consultant.
I would love that.
All right, so this is our next question. This is from Alexandra Figueroa Brian. I hope I'm saying
close.
that right. I hope I'm saying that right. That was one that I was afraid I'd get wrong. So, emergency communications specialist in the communications division. Deputies have what is called less lethal options at their disposal. Why can't deputies use something like a tranquilizer dart to stop a perpetrator?
Well, we do use many different less lethal weapons. One is the taser. One is pepper spray, and so those weapons are designed to incapacitate the subject, but without causing injury. So, as far as that idea of tranquilizers or darts, we're always looking at the most innovative, less lethal tools that are out there. And if someone comes up with something that can help us save lives and also keep our community safe, we're more than happy to take a look at that.
But I'm sure a lot of these times they're split-second decisions, and something like a tranquilizer dart, if you miss, they're still coming at you, or if it doesn't sort of take right away.
That's correct. And for those tools, they are specifically designed to use in a less than lethal encounter. So in other words, if someone has a gun or even a knife and that deputy's life is in danger, or a citizen's life is in immediate danger, sometimes they have to take action, and less lethal isn't always the best method for that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so next question. This is from Melissa Belmont, Corporal Melissa Belmont in Sector 6. There's been a lot of changes in technology and community involvement in the past 15 years here at the Sheriff's Office. What do you envision for the next 5 years in terms of growth, community service, and overall agency direction?
Well, as far as growth, I think everyone has kind of heard the numbers. They say 1,000 people a week are moving into Central Florida. So it's incumbent upon us here at the Sheriff's Office to keep up with that growth. So that means hiring more deputy sheriffs, hiring more dispatchers, hiring more fleet personnel and more people to do our forensics and all those things. So we have to, the number one priority is to keep up with the growth, but we also have to keep up with technology. And we're always looking at the most innovative ways to do that, whether it's increasing our license plate readers or video surveillance in certain areas. It's very important for us to keep up with the latest technology. And the law enforcement is constantly changing, so we're always looking at that. We're always sending people to conferences to see what is the latest and greatest. One of the things that has come on, and I think there's a question about this as well, is that in terms of drones, we have 5 drones here. We use them for a variety of different things, and we're trying to get some laws changed for the state of Florida, make it easier for us to use. And I think the important thing to know about drones is that, we're just looking to use them to, search for missing kids or missing adults with Alzheimer's. Or we're going to use them in maybe a hostage scenario type situation, so we can get a better vantage point. We're not looking to violate anyone's rights with this new technology.
So that leads me into the next question, and I maybe you can just get a little bit more detailed on the drones. But here's the question. This is from Deputy First Class Michael Kleinfeld. He's an SRO at Windermere High School. What is the future of drone technology at the Orange County Sheriff's Office?
Well, we have a number of different drones, ranging from ones that are small to ones that are very large. And depending on the situation, we will deploy that drone. And I think the interesting thing about drones is it could do the same thing, or some of the same things a helicopter can do, but it takes a lot less money to operate. So, we're hoping that those advance even further with infrared technology and the ability for us to help catch bad guys even quicker.
Mm-hmm. All right. So next question. So this is from Lieutenant Mike Crabb. He actually had about 10 questions, but I sort of boiled it down to these 2, but we'll do the first one from him. And he's in government affairs. And so with recent technology, okay, hold on, let me start that again. I'm sorry. So this one's from Lieutenant Michael Crabb. He actually had about 10 different questions, but I boiled it down to these 2. He's in government affairs. What recent technology do you think has changed policing?
I think the number one piece of technology that has changed policing for the good is body-worn cameras. I've been a huge proponent of those for years. Glad to see that when I got here to the Sheriff's Office that we already had body-worn cameras, but now we're expanding that to units that traditionally didn't have body-worn cameras, like K9 and like SWAT, because we want to give the public a good picture and be transparent of what's going on out there in everything we do. And I think and I know the deputy sheriffs on the streets and are using the body-worn cameras are very thankful for them, because we get to show people what we deal with. Sometimes the not so pretty side of law enforcement, the things that people say to us and do to us. And I think it also holds us accountable. And then when an incident does happen, if we have body-worn cameras, especially from several deputies who are at the scene, we're able to see the whole story from start to finish, and right or wrong, make a decision, be transparent about it, and do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because a lot of times, everybody has a phone nowadays, and sometimes the recording of that phone starts maybe a little bit after the incident actually started, or you see something online or on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and maybe that first part of the video is cut off from somebody's phone because maybe it showed something before. So I think the body cam footage hopefully at least can tell the full story from the very beginning to the very end.
I have seen that scenario that you just described dozens and dozens of times, where we'll get partial cell phone videos and that don't tell the whole story, that don't show how it started, that don't show the behavior and maybe the actions of a perpetrator before the deputy sheriff either took some kind of action or used force. So I think it's been a game changer for law enforcement and has definitely made us better as a profession.
So this sort of piggybacks on that question. Is there any technology out there that you think will have a big impact on policing, maybe going forward, maybe something that hasn't been implemented here yet, or maybe other places, but could really have a big impact on policing?
I think one of the newest pieces of technology that law enforcement will have to decide how and when they use that is facial recognition. And I know it's been a very controversial subject, but if we intend to use that, we want to use it to save lives. And I've used this example over and over again. Facial recognition helps us catch criminals. Facial recognition, if used in real time, really could help us get a murderer off the street. It could help us find a missing child or a missing adult. And I know there are many different groups and many people who feel that their rights may be being violated, or that might be used in a nefarious way. But remember, we have mechanisms in place that we can check. We have checks and balances. We can hold law enforcement accountable if there is that bad apple using it in a nefarious way. But I think it's a great piece of technology. They use it at the airport. They use it if you go on a cruise. Facial recognition technology is everywhere, and so we just need to see how we can use it best in law enforcement the correct way to help keep our community safe.
So this is one more question from Mike Crabb, and this is probably a little personal because he works in government affairs. Is there anything you're working on with state legislators to make Orange County safer?
Yeah, there's a couple things that we are working on with our state legislators. One is the safe storage of firearms in gun stores after hours. So right now, our gun stores close, and many times we have criminals who break through the front door of that gun store and then just go through the wall or the display case and grab all these firearms, steal them within seconds. So what we want to do is we want to make it law that the gun owners have to lock their guns up overnight, much like any jewelry store does every single night. So we're still trying to push that through. Another piece of legislation that we are working on has to do with lewd conduct, people who expose themselves. So right now, if a man exposes themselves to a 16-year-old, that's a felony. But if they go right across the street to the University of Central Florida and expose themselves to an 18 or 19-year-old, that's a misdemeanor. So one of the things we were trying to do is change that to make that any type of exposure, whether it's to a child or to an adult, make it a felony, to make it easier for us to do our job, to get warrants for arrest, to get warrants for your surveillance and tracking vehicles of these, really people who are a danger to our society out there exposing themselves. So we're still working on that as well.
Is that a big problem in Orange County?
It's not a big problem, but there are people out there who do that. And so the problem that we have is those folks do it over and over and over again because maybe they're just being arrested for a misdemeanor. So we want to make it a felony if you expose yourself to an adult in a lewd way, and help keep those people behind bars.
All right, so this next question is from Lydia Hubble. She's an investigative analyst. June marks 4 years since the tragedy at Pulse. At the time, you were the chief of the Orlando Police Department. How has being the chief of police during the Pulse shooting influenced your job as sheriff?
Wow. So I think it has really enlightened me to the fact that a tragedy like that can happen anywhere, at any time, and that you have to be prepared for an event like that. Like we were in Orlando, there has to be the proper training in place. Our law enforcement has to have the proper equipment to handle a situation like that. And then we also have to have great relationships with all the surrounding agencies, because if an incident like that, God forbid, were to happen again, it's going to take the entire community to handle that type of situation.
Has it changed how we as a region prepares for something like that? Because, like you said, those are so rare. It'll, hopefully it'll never happen again here in Central Florida. But after that happened here, does the region train differently because of that?
Yes, they definitely train more and train differently. I think all of our equipment here has been upgraded, and I'm talking about here, I mean all throughout Central Florida, like getting Kevlar helmets. We're getting additional body armor that can stop a rifle round. We're having personal first aid kits where you can stop the bleeding immediately, and you're putting all of our supervisors through incident command school to learn how to run these type of incidents from their level.
All right. So I have a few questions. I know like I said, I know we had a bunch, but I'm the host, so I get to ask some questions too. What's been the best part about being sheriff?
So probably the best part of my job is interacting with our employees here, but also the residents. So it's so nice to run into a resident, especially a child, and have them recognize you as the sheriff, and so excited to meet you. And it just really, it makes my day that people want to talk to me, want to tell us about all the great things that they've seen our agency do. I think that's probably the best part of my job, is going out, speaking in the community, talking to our residents, learning from them, and also telling them what we're doing in their community to keep them safe.
I know over the years, and you've been a law enforcement officer for more than 30 years, and so I'm sure you've seen things change over that time, and perceptions and how we're covered from outside news outlets. How does that all affect recruiting and getting people to do this job? Because, I've only been here a year, and, I've met people who have done this a long time. I've met people who are just starting to be law enforcement officers, and they all have sort of their take at the job and whether they would do it or not if they were coming into it. Now, how do you get I don't want to just say young people, how do you get new people interested in wanting to become law enforcement officers?
Well, the good news is that we're in great shape here in Orange County. Last year, we hired 160 deputies. We're on pace to do that again this year. And so I think nationally, some law enforcement agencies have struggled with recruitment and retention. Oh, it's been the exact opposite here. And part of that is because we've talked about this before, 1,000 people a week moving into Central Florida. Well, a lot of those people want to become police officers and deputy sheriffs. So they are specifically telling us they're applying here because this is where they want to raise their family, which is great news for us. So we have plenty of qualified applicants. And as we continue to grow, not only are we going to try and fill the positions of those who retire, but we'll also be adding new positions. We added over 50 positions last year. We'll add over 50 positions this coming year. So we're in good shape here in Orange County as far as recruitment and retention.
Now, I've been out to the academy before. I've seen sort of the work that the recruits have to do, both in the classroom and out training and exercising and conditioning and all that. As I said, you've been a law enforcement officer for 30 years, and I'm sure you went through all that training when you first started. How do you think you would do if you did it today?
I think I would do great.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people ask me, because I wear the uniform every single day.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask me, they're like, well, how long are you going to be the sheriff? And I say, well, first I say a long time. And then I say, I'm going to continue to be the sheriff here in Orange County as long as I can do the same things that our deputy sheriffs can do.
Okay.
And if that means running and jumping over fences and arresting bad guys and being able to use all the things on this tool belt that we have, including my firearm and all those other things, then I'll continue to do it as long as I can do what my deputy sheriffs can do.
And now I haven't actually been out to the range yet to do a podcast with the folks out at the range. I've been to the range to do a SWAT one, but I haven't talked to the range folks. Do you have to get recertified as well, just like everybody else?
I do. I go through all the same training as everyone else.
Really?
Yes.
All right. Well, Sheriff, thanks again for being here on Behind the Star. I want to thank everybody who sent in questions. I apologize if we didn't get to all of them. Like I said, we had a ton of questions. Hopefully we can do this again. We're at the 25th episode. Maybe in the next few we'll come back and ask for more questions, because I'm sure there's going to be more questions from people that work here at the sheriff's office. But once again, thanks again for sending this in. Thanks for listening to Behind the Star. As I said before, we just passed our 5,000th download. We're really happy about that. We're hoping to get this out there to more people. So if you see this, tell your friends and share it on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. We're trying to get the word out that we do this. And once again, thanks again to Sheriff Mina for joining us here on Behind the Star.
Thanks, John.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Star. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Jon Busdeker, and this is Behind the Star.